In the genetic map of Europe, one people stand as an impossible riddle. While waves of migration swept across the continent for millennia, Romans conquering, Vikings raiding, empires rising and falling, one group remained untouched, unchanged, unbroken, hidden in the fog-shrouded peaks between Spain and France. The Basques have defied every attempt at conquest, conversion, and assimilation. Their language predates Latin, Greek, and every other tongue spoken in Europe. Their blood carries genetic markers found nowhere else on Earth. Scientists call them living fossils, the last remnants of Europe's first people. But here, what will make your spine tingle? Recent DNA discoveries suggest the Basques aren't just ancient survivors. They may be the key to unlocking humanity's most guarded secret, how we became us. Their genetic code doesn't just tell the story of one stubborn tribe. It rewrites the entire origin story of European civilization. What you're about to discover will shatter everything you thought you knew about your ancestors. Because the Basques didn't just survive history, they are history. The living, breathing answer to who we were before we became who we are. And their blood remembers everything. There are places on Earth that exist outside of time. It's places where the past refuses to die, where ancient secrets pulse through the veins of the living. Deep in the heart of the Pyrenees, between the modern nations of Spain and France, lies such a place. This is Euskal, the homeland of the Basques, a people who shouldn't exist. A living contradiction that has puzzled scientists for over a century and rewritten our understanding of European history. They speak a language that predates Rome, Christianity, even the very concept of Europe itself. Their blood carries genetic markers found nowhere else on Earth. They are surrounded by Indo-European peoples, yet they remain utterly distinct. They have survived ice ages, empires, and modern dictatorships. They are the Basques. And locked within their DNA is the greatest archaeological discovery never buried in the ground. A genetic time capsule that preserves the story of Europe's forgotten past. In the borderlands between modern Spain and France, a profound linguistic mystery endures. It is a language that, by all historical logic, should have vanished millennia ago. This is Euskara, more commonly known as Basque. Survival is a puzzle, but its vitality is undeniable. Today it lives not as a relic in dusty archives, but on the playgrounds and in the classrooms of the Pyrenees. Spoken by a new generation who navigate their world with a foot in two eras. Switching seamlessly between this ancient tongue and the dominant languages of Spanish or French, Euskara is what linguists call a pre-Indo-European isolate. Imagine if you discovered a living dinosaur in your backyard. It's essentially what Euskara is too. Linguistics, a creature from a world that no longer exists. As one scholar puts it, this language stands utterly alone among European tongues, defying every attempt to connect it to other language families. 5,000 years ago, Europe was a linguistic mosaic. Hundreds of unique languages, each evolved from local hunter-gatherer populations over tens of thousands of years. Then came the Great Wave, the Indo-European expansion. Like a linguistic tsunami, it swept away almost everything in its path. Sanskrit, Greek, Latin, Germanic, Celtic, Slavic, all children of this conquering tongue that originated somewhere in the steppes of Central Asia. But Euskara? Euskara was already ancient when the first Indo-Europeans spoke their first word. In most European languages, you say, "I give you the book," simple subject verb object. But in Euskara, you say, "Liburo imen dizut," literally, "book thee, give I to you." The verb imen contains information about who is giving, who is receiving, and what is being given, all in a single word. The entire structure of thought is different. But the strangeness goes deeper. Euskara uses something called ergative case, found in less than 25% of the world's languages. When a Basque speaker says the man saw the woman, the word for man changes form to show he's doing the seeing. It is a grammatical system more common in languages from the Caucasus Mountains or the Amazon rainforest than in Europe. For over a century, linguists have tried to connect Euskara to other languages. They've proposed links to Georgian, to ancient Iberian, even to languages in North Africa. Every attempt has failed. Euskara stands alone, a linguistic universe of one. These aren't just words, they're time machines. Every syllable of Euskara carries the breath of peoples who lived and died before the pyramids were built, before Stonehenge was raised, before the first cities rose in Mesopotamia. When a Basque grandmother sings a lullaby to her grandchild, she's singing in the language of the mammoth hunters. But the mystery deepens, because if their language is impossible, their blood is even more so. In 1900, Austrian scientist Karl Landsteiner discovered something that would revolutionize medicine: blood types. But he couldn't have imagined what his discovery would reveal about human history. As blood typing spread across Europe in the early 20th century, researchers began to notice patterns. Different populations had different frequencies of blood types, and one population stood out as dramatically different from all the rest. Most human populations have about 15% Rh-negative blood. It's a minority marker almost everywhere in the world. In Africa, it's less than 5%. In Asia, sometimes less than 1%. But in the Basque region, something extraordinary appears on every genetic survey. In some Basque communities, over 35% of the population is Rh-negative. In certain isolated valleys, it can reach 50% or more. That's not just unusual, it's unprecedented anywhere else on Earth, as population geneticists have discovered. This isn't simply a statistical anomaly, it's a genetic signature of incredible antiquity. The Rh-negative blood type is ancient, possibly 50,000 years old or more. Its high frequency in the Basque population suggested something remarkable. They were just another European ethnic group. They were the descendants of some of Europe's very first inhabitants, preserved in genetic amber. For decades, scientists tried to solve the Basque puzzle using crude tool skull measurements, blood samples, and wild theories. Some claimed they were descendants of Atlantis. Others suggested they were the lost tribe of Cro-Magnon man. A few even proposed they were visitors from another planet. But the real breakthrough came not from measuring bones, but from reading the code of life itself. The Human Genome Project gave us the ultimate time machine, the ability to trace ancestry through DNA, with precision undreamed of by earlier generations. When scientists sequenced ancient DNA from prehistoric European skeletons and compared it to modern Basque DNA, they found something incredible. The Basques weren't just related to Europe's first farmers or first hunters. They were related to both. But more than that, they were the genetic bridge between them. This was the key to the first part of the Basque mystery. They weren't the unchanged descendants of a single ancient population. They were something far more remarkable, the genetic memory of Europe's entire prehistoric story, preserved in the isolation of their mountain homeland. But it's not just the Rh factor. Basques have unique frequencies for dozens of genetic markers. They have different rates of lactose tolerance, different susceptibilities to certain diseases, even different frequencies of genes affecting hair and eye color. Each marker tells part of the story of their isolation. The blood mystery was solved, but it opened an even bigger question. How did this genetic time capsule survive? How did one small population preserve the genetic signature of prehistoric Europe, while the rest of the continent was transformed beyond recognition? To understand the Basques, we must journey back to when Europe was an alien world. 40,000 years ago, our planet was locked in the grip of the last ice age. This wasn't just cold weather, this was a different Earth entirely. Ice sheets 2 kilometers thick crushed the continent under their weight. The English Channel was dry land, Mediterranean was hundreds of meters lower. Most of what we now call Europe was uninhabitable wasteland. Humanity was pushed to the very edge of extinction, surviving in tiny pockets of green roof, shotted across the frozen landscape. One of these refugia was here, in northern Spain and southwestern France. And in the darkness of caves, our Ice Age ancestors left their souls on stone. These aren't just paintings, they're prayers. It's messages from the edge of oblivion. We are here, we survived, we are human. That handprint was made by someone who could have been the direct ancestor of a modern Basque. The genetic thread connecting them stretches back an unbroken 20,000 years. As the ice retreated starting around 15,000 years ago, these Ice Age survivors, the Western hunter-gatherers, spread across Europe, were tall, dark-skinned, blue-eyed nomads who followed herds of reindeer and mammoth. They were the first Europeans, the original inhabitants of the continent. For thousands of years, these hunter-gatherers had Europe to themselves. They developed sophisticated technologies, complex societies, and rich spiritual traditions. The Basque Country was one of their major population centers, a crossroads between the Atlantic and Mediterranean worlds. Then, around 9,000 years ago, everything changed. From the Fertile Crescent of the Middle East came a new people, the Neolithic farmers. They brought revolutionary technologies: agriculture, pottery, domesticated animals, and permanent settlements. This wasn't just cultural change, it was demographic replacement on a massive scale. The farmers had numbers. They could support much larger populations than the hunter-gatherers. As they spread across Europe, they didn't just settle among the hunters in most places, they replaced them entirely. In Britain, the genetic evidence shows that Neolithic farmers replaced up to 90% of the existing hunter-gatherer population. In Central Europe, the replacement was even more complete. The original Europeans were being erased from their own continent, but not in the Basque lands. Here, something unique occurred. The incoming farmers and the local hunter-gatherers didn't fight for territory, they merged. They became one people. The genetic evidence shows almost perfect 50-50 mixing between the incoming farmers and the local hunter-gatherers. This was unconquest or replacement. This was integration on a scale we'd unsee anywhere else in Europe. For thousands of years, this mixed population flourished in their mountain homeland. They combined the ancient wisdom of the hunters with the new technologies of the farmers. They developed a unique culture, a unique language, and a unique genetic signature. They were the children of both worlds, the ancient and the new. But their story of peaceful coexistence was about to face its greatest test. Because around 4,500 years ago, a third wave was coming. And this one would reshape the entire continent in ways that echo to this day. The Indo-Europeans, masters of the horse, wielders of bronze, speakers of the mother tongue that would birth 1,000 languages. They came from the steppes of Central Asia, and they came as conquerors. This was the most dramatic population replacement in European history. The Indo-European expansion introduced the corded ware culture, the bell beaker people, and the genetic ancestry that would dominate Europe for the next 4 millennia. They brought not just new languages, but new social structures, new technologies, and new ways of understanding the world. In most of Europe, this third wave was as transformative as the second. Local populations were overwhelmed, absorbed, or displaced. The Celtic languages spread across Western Europe. The Germanic languages took root in the north. The ancestors of the Romans established themselves in Italy, but something extraordinary happened in the Basque country. The mountains that had sheltered them for millennia did so again. The Indo-European wave split, flowing around the Pyrenees like water around a rock. The Basque genetic signature, that precious mixture of hunter and farmer, was preserved intact. This is why the Basques are so genetically unique. They are living representatives of Neolithic Europe. The continent, as it existed before the great Indo-European transformation, they are Europe's memory, made flesh. Geography is destiny. The Pyrenees weren't just mountains. They were the walls of a fortress that protected the Basque people for millennia. But mountains alone don't explain survival. The real secret was something far more powerful than stone. When Rome conquered Iberia in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE, they transformed everything they touched. Tribal lands became provinces. Local languages became Latin. Celtic and Iberian cultures were absorbed into the Roman machine, but they met fierce resistance in the Basque highlands. The Romans called them Vascons, the people of the rocks. They built roads to the edges of Basque territory, but never through it. They established cities nearby, but never within the heart of their lands. For 4 centuries of Roman rule, the Basques remained essentially unconquered. This wasn't just military resistance. It was cultural resistance. The Basques adopted useful Roman innovations, iron tools, some architectural techniques, trade goods. But they never adopted Roman identity. They remained stubbornly, proudly themselves. When Rome fell, others tried to fill the vacuum. The Visigoths established a kingdom in Spain, but their influence in the Basque lands remained minimal. The Basques continued to govern themselves according to their own ancient laws and customs. This spirit of resistance reached its legendary peak in 778 AD. The mighty Charlemagne, conqueror of the Lombards and future Holy Roman Emperor, was returning to France from his Spanish campaign through the Pyrenees when disaster struck. At Roncesvalles Pass, Basque forces ambushed Charlemagne's rearguard. The famous paladin Roland, hero of countless medieval songs, fell along with the flower of Frankish knighthood. It was a stunning victory that echoed through medieval literature for centuries. But this wasn't just a military victory. It was a statement of identity. The message was clear. The Basques would not be absorbed, would not be conquered, would not disappear into the great churning sea of European history. Recent genetic studies have revealed just how successful this resistance was. Scientists have identified what they call peri-Basque populations' genetic buffer zones around the core Basque territories. What researchers see is a genetic gradient. The further you move from the Basque core, the more diluted the unique Basque genetic signature becomes. It's like ripples in a pond, showing us exactly where Basque influence ended and the outside world began. The genetics, the archaeology, and the linguistics all tell the same story. The Basques didn't just resist conquest, they actively maintained their distinctiveness. They created what scientists now call cultural barriers to gene flow. But the Basques didn't just resist through warfare. They built something stronger than any fortress, a cultural identity so powerful it could survive anything history threw at it. Their sports weren't just games, they were training for war and symbols of strength. Their festivals weren't just celebrations, they were acts of cultural preservation. Every song sung in euskera, every dance performed in traditional dress, was a declaration. We are still here. This cultural fortress was built on 4 pillars: language, law, sport, and story. The Basque fueros, their ancient legal codes, governed their communities according to principles that predated Roman law. Their epic poems preserved memories of heroes and battles from the mists of time. Even their buildings were acts of resistance. Basque farmhouses, called ETs, weren't just homes. They were symbols of family continuity, stretching back generations. The architecture itself embodied Basque values: strength, endurance, connection to the land. This cultural fortress faced its greatest test in the 20th century. Francisco Franco's dictatorship, which ruled Spain from 1939 to 1975, sought to create a unified Spanish state by erasing regional identities. The Basque language was banned. Their flag was outlawed. Speaking euskera could result in imprisonment or worse. Franco understood what the Romans and Charlemagne had not. To destroy the Basques, you had to destroy their culture. For nearly 4 decades, the Basque identity was driven underground. Parents whispered lullabies in euskera behind closed doors. Traditional festivals were celebrated in secret. An entire culture was forced into hiding. The testimonies of those who lived through Franco's repression reveal the incredible determination required to preserve their heritage. Every whispered word in euskera was an act of rebellion, every secret celebration of victory against cultural extinction. But you cannot kill the soul of a people. When democracy returned to Spain in the late 1970s, Basque culture exploded back into life with incredible vitality. Today, euskera is taught in schools throughout the Basque provinces. It's the language of business, government, and daily life. The Basques prove that identity isn't just about the past, it's about the future. They've become leaders in renewable energy, world-class cuisine, and cutting-edge architecture. They've shown that preserving your roots doesn't mean rejecting progress. We return now to where we began, the impossible language. Because the final piece of the Basque puzzle lies not in their blood, but in their words. Recent discoveries have revealed that euskera wasn't just a cultural treasure, it was a genetic fortress. Scientists have discovered something extraordinary: the subtle genetic differences between Basque communities. From one valley to the next correspond almost perfectly to their linguistic dialects. What researchers discovered changed everything we thought we knew about language and genetics. Villages that spoke different dialects of euskera were more likely to marry within their own linguistic community. Language wasn't just cultural, it was literally shaping gene flow. This wasn't just cultural preference, it was evolutionary strategy. The complex, nearly impenetrable nature of Basque dialects meant that even villages just a few kilometers apart could be genetically distinct. Language was the ultimate guardian of genetic diversity. Consider the implications. In most of Europe, genetic variation decreases gradually with distance. But in the Basque country, genetic variation jumps dramatically at linguistic boundaries. A village speaking the Gapoan dialect might be genetically more distinct from a village speaking Bikanjas 20 kilometers away than 2 French villages separated by hundreds of kilometers. Every word of euskera was a genetic barrier. Every sentence was a biological boundary. Every dialect was a separate genetic pool. The language didn't just preserve Basque culture, it preserved Basque DNA with a precision that would make any geneticist envious. This is why the survival of Euskera is so crucial. It's not just about preserving words, it's about preserving the entire genetic and cultural heritage of the Basque people. When Franco tried to destroy their language, he was attempting something far more sinister than cultural suppression. He was attempting genetic genocide. Today, Basque geneticists are at the forefront of population studies worldwide. They're using their own unique genetic heritage to understand human migration, disease susceptibility, and evolutionary biology.
8.
The preserved past is illuminating the future of human genetics. The Basques have given science a unique window into human evolution. Because their population has been so stable for so long, researchers can study genetic processes that are invisible in other populations. They're not just preserving their own heritage, they're preserving knowledge that benefits all of humanity. Recent studies using Basque genetic data have contributed to breakthroughs in understanding autism, heart disease, and even aging. The genetic isolation that preserved their ancient heritage is now helping solve modern medical mysteries. Here lies the ultimate Basque paradox. A people defined by isolation have become global leaders in innovation. A culture rooted in the Stone Age is shaping the 21st century. How do the most ancient Europeans remain among the most modern? The answer lies in understanding what the Basques truly preserved. It was unjust language or genetics, it was something more precious. The ability to remain themselves while embracing change. In the words of one renowned Basque chef, "We use techniques our grandmothers taught us, but we're not afraid to experiment." Tradition isn't about living in the past, it's about carrying the best of the past into the future. This is the secret of Basque success. They preserved their core identity while remaining ruthlessly adaptive at the edges. They kept their language, but learned others. They maintained their customs, but embraced new technologies. Today, the Basque country generates more renewable energy per capita than almost anywhere else in Europe. They've applied their ancient relationship with their harsh landscape to become leaders in sustainable technology. Their startups are creating artificial intelligence in Euskera. Their universities are at the forefront of genetic research. Their artists are reinterpreting ancient myths for global audiences. They prove that cultural preservation and innovation aren't opposites, they're partners. The Basques offer a model for the modern world. You can honor your ancestors while embracing the future. You can be rooted in global, ancient and innovative, traditional and revolutionary. The Basque paradox has been solved, but the wonder remains. They are proof that identity is not just about who you are, it's about who you choose to remain. It's for 7,000 years, through ice ages and empires, through conquest and suppression, the Basques have made the same choice: to be themselves. They are the guardians of Europe's memory, the keepers of the continental code. In their DNA flows the blood of the mammoth hunters and the first farmers. In their language echoes the voices of peoples who watched the ice retreat and the world begin anew. Voices of peoples who watched the ice retreat and the world begin anew.